Okay, so it's turn 10 in this Omniscience game. I'm going to go through 3 turns as normal, and then at the end, because we'll be coming to the end of year 0, I'm going to do both a graph roundup and also go through a list of all of the diplomacy that we've got going on in the game. I've put out a note to all the players, asked them to keep me advised on their naps, their dealings, their wheelings, their plans. I've got a lot of those messages. I'm going to bring them together and summarize them at the end of turn 12. But until then, let's chop through turns 10, 11, and 12. We have a throne claimed. That is Calum claiming the throne that they have fought so long and hard for. Good on them. And then I'm just going to click through these, but we're going to analyze their importance from the map, not from the list here. So, Pangaea expanding, Beratos then bumping with Pangaea and failing. What province was that in? Here. Okay, so Pangaea and Beratos bump at this point of their border. To be honest, this is a long way from Beratos. This is a long way from Beratos. They are a long way from home, whereas it's 3 from Pan's cap, which makes a degree of sense. Helheim, was this their prophet? Sorry, my voice is a little off today. I think this was their prophet. Okay, so there's the independent province here of Pisachas and, are these Ghana's? Ghana's. Okay, so undead Lunken troops, right? Including some ethereal ones and non-ethereal ones. And you're like, maybe I can use this Holy 3 and his Banish, which is what he's about to do, Final Rest, in order to do a lot of damage. And the answer is, bloody hell, yes you can. The problem is there's nothing screening for him. Like, it wouldn't take much to screen for him and make this entirely viable. He's using Final Rest, which does oodles of damage. Oodles of damage. You can see it's basically a Soul Slay effect. But they're going to get up and they're just going to hurt. They're just going to hit him. Like, I don't know what the plan was here. Like, give him some troops. If you're trying to expand during a war, that's fine. But these guys are yeah, okay, all right. So he made 11 kills, but now he's without his prophet, which to me is an unnecessary loss at this stage of the game. Silver Swamps, Helheim again. There's going to be a lot of Helheim expanding this turn, like every other turn. Okay, so Atlantis attacked Xibalba, it looks like. Yes, they have. They've taken 2 provinces, and there was no PD in 1, 2, 3. So, Basalt Kings and some supporting troops over here. Let's have a quick look at what's going on here. Looks like Warriors of the Deep and a Basalt King with, yep, just his basic gearing. So this is just black steel full plate. So a Fear Thug leading the way, and then a bunch of the Warriors of the Deep. So we said that Xibalba's starting position was difficult. We said that there was a danger Atlantis might rush them. Atlantis is now rushing them. Surprise. I'm surprised by how few troops there are. It means there's very little siege strength here. Like, I understand Basalt Kings are useful, but given how trash Xibalban troops are, I'd be bringing a lot more Atlantean troops to break down their walls and also to massacre them more efficiently. There's a lot that can go wrong with a not very killy single thug, but we'll see. But that's interesting. Interesting that war is going on while the Atlantean expansion forces are still out elsewhere. So he didn't even give his opponent the respect of bringing his forces home, but you know what? That's probably a legitimate call. Calum taking the Lion Tribe province we said they were going to. Femoria poking at Iomi PD with 3 Fearbolg warriors and dying. Not sure what was going on there. Pangaea expansion, this looks fine, especially against barbarians. Those losses are okay when half of them are Maenads. Helheim lost. Okay, this looks like you got Skelly spammed. Did you get Skelly spammed? One of the few ways you can beat elves is you can be able to generate more units than they can kill. And if you've got a bunch of independent circle masters, who are, what? Yeah, a D2 with death gems and some D1s, they'll put out a spattering of skeletons, I suppose. A couple of them got hit by javelins and lost their glamour in an unlucky feat, but I have a feeling they're just going to wear out against the wall of skeletons. No, they're killing their way through. I guess because there's no... they're only D1s, not D2s across the board. And they eventually fail morale. Oof. Did they lose their commander? Yes, they lost their commander. They didn't get Skelly... Well, they did get Skelly spammed, but the heavy infantry went back and killed the Vanhurst. So there you go, a Varnhurst and 4 Hellhildings dead. That is unusual. We have otherwise seen 0 attrition expansion from Helheim. Saramatia checking how many Bone Tribe there are. Saramatia killing some independents. Yomi versus Fomorian PD. Saramatia against independents. Orm attacking Pangaea. This might be part of an agreed settlement. I'm not sure. I will check that and get back to you by the end of turn 12. Helheim attacked independents. Beratos, Atlantis still killing independents while they're rushing Xibalba. Makoni rolling out and doing exactly the same thing. Pig doing its job. TNN killing Wolf Tribe. Yomi attacking Fomorian PD again with their demons and again with the Dione. Here it's just independent expansion. This looks like a bump. Yep, this was a bump, so Makoni moves in with their mercenaries, takes a province, and then this Xibalban force, unaware that they're about to be at war with Atlantis, faces off against these mercenary macemen. And these people are about to have a bad day in their Battle Brothers playthrough because they get attack reared. And some of these troops are Sun Guides that are actually quite good. And they get alpha down. Sucks to be them. So that, I believe, was basically, yeah, they lost 12 Xibalban warriors and they killed 30 swordsmen, but GC won't care because those are mercenaries who are at the end of their contract. And then Helheim also lost to Lion Tribe. Colour me surprised. Is it because they did not have enough units to make up a squad and thus avoid the morale problems? Because I'm only counting 4 Hellherdings, and you need 5 to avoid morale checks. So as it is now, they're vulnerable every time one of them gets poked to taking constant morale. So is a Javelin going to poke you? Because Lion Tribe are not good. Okay, so yeah, a couple of them got pasted by being harassed down, having lost their glamour. And the rest ran. 3 Hellherdings dead to Lion Tribe. Mark that one down, guys. That doesn't happen often. Use more. Use more than 4. Use 5 or 6. And finally, Relay killing some independents. So let's talk about the big development this turn. Atlantis has moved in on Xibalba. Why did we think they might do this? Well, Xibalba is in a weak penned-in position where all of their provinces, bar 1, 2, I guess, but really these are now exposed. These are all coastal. Their cap is coastal. The provinces close to them are coastal. Atlantis is right here. It's a 2-province run from Atlantis' capital to Xibalba's cap. Xibalba is a late-game power. They thrive when they get a blood economy online, and they're very, very efficient with it. Problem is their troops kind of suck, and Atlantis has decent troops and, as he's shown us, Tech 0 thugs. So it makes sense. I think Atlantis is going to have to be careful because there are things in Xibalba that can hurt him. And the flyers are obviously mobile. But in this setting, being a flyer doesn't really help you much because there's nowhere to go. Atlantis can just drive directly for the one fort that Xibalba has, and as long as that fort is under siege, the rest of the Xibalban economy is shut down and all of his production is shut down. Now, is Xibalba a worthy prize? Well, these gems are not high priority for Atlantis. The fire and earth are useful. Death is a good gem type, but Atlantis doesn't use it particularly well. I don't know. Interestingly enough, it's notable that Xibalba itself isn't a cave. Now, against a lot of foes, that wouldn't matter. Atlanteans have partial dark vision, going up to 100% dark vision, I believe, on the actual deep ones. Let's check that quickly. Yep, dark vision 100 on the deep ones. So not really a problem versus Atlantis, but also not a problem here because the map has decided that Xibalba isn't a cave. Xibalba, I'm not sure if they're normally a cave stud. I know Agartha is, but I'm not sure about Xibalba. What can Xibalba do? Well, they're kind of in a difficult position because their expansion army, which is fairly weak but is not nothing, is still over here. I guess they can bring it home, but if they do and get caught, it's going to die. I think their best bet is to just push out as many units that hit very, very hard as possible. So that means Scorpions or Sun Guides or some combinations of that, so that you can kill off the relatively small Atlantean army, but you need to be able to kill the Basalt King, or you need to be able to HP route it by killing these Warriors of the Deep. They don't have much prot. They don't have much defense. They're pretty offensive, so you might be able to alpha strike down the troops now that you know this formation, which is that the Basalt King's in the front. So you might be able to attack rear or attack center or whatever in order to clear this out and HP route this guy. That's probably your best bet. For Atlantis, I would consolidate, I would group up, I would lock down the capital, briefly fan out to take all the other provinces, but keep pressure on the capital so that no breakout can succeed. I actually don't think Atlantis has enough stuff here. I'm amazed at how little material they have brought to this rush. Like, 2 kings, yes, that's very significant, but I'm surprised the army is so small. Anyway. Elsewhere, Helheim still expanding like a madman, but lost 2 this turn, which is interesting. The Maconian expansion is decent, but is coming to an end. What'll be interesting now is to see if Maconi swings west and vultures Xibalba, or whether they, try and pinch some Atlantean provinces, although that would probably be pretty short-sighted. But vulturing Xibalba is an option. The other option is proxying and supporting Xibalba, or talking to Relay and proxying Xibalba in order to hold back Atlantis. Relay should also look at this interestingly. So I've been told that there's a nap between Relay and Atlantis by this point in the game. The question is, does Relay now cancel it and go in on Atlantis while they're on Xibalba? I think the answer is not immediately, but watch closely. And if Atlantis suffers, then Relay would do well to jump onto them and clear out the rest of the lake, rather than worrying about land affairs. The final thing to mention this turn, because we'll probably focus it on more maybe next turn, is a turn where there were no major battles in the Fomoriya-Yomi War. Fomoriya moved back to consolidate and gave up land for time. Haerdalas, I think, guessing that that's what was very likely to happen, has chosen to fan out and collect as much land as possible. So his original expansion army took 1, and then each of his 3 Dai-Oni super combatants took 1. Actually, no, he took 3. This province was actually a bounce off his PD. So his Dai-Oni had been here, moved south. It will now move north again. The army that was here appears to have retreated. It could, because it was led by a Fomorian king. And as I forgot to say in previous episodes, Fomorian kings have sailing, so they just hooked back to the capital. Now we can see an army of mostly Firbolg and warriors and slingers. I really hope he's not making the slingers. It's led by a Fomorian king. What I'm hoping is happening is that there are Numidian warriors in here that we cannot see with our scout, because we don't have Spirit Sight in this version of the game, the mod rather. So I'm hoping there are Numidian warriors here, not just Firbolg, because Firbolg are not the appropriate counter to the Dai-Oni that are coming for him. So there we go. The map is starting to fill out. We're running out of independent provinces quite quickly. There's still a gap down here, south of, I suppose, Yomi, north of Kalem, east of Saramosha. This is accounted for by the fact that Kalem expanded slightly slower than expected. The Relay was unable to go on land by virtue of being Relay, and also the fact that its cap circle land province was full of barbarians who they wouldn't be keen to fight. So they prioritized water instead. And Yomi getting distracted by attacking Fomoria, and that, I think, accounts for this blob of independent provinces here. Everything else, pretty cleaned up. We'll probably see all the expansion done by the end of Year 0. But considering people have already started their wars, I doubt we'll be lacking for entertainment. So that's it for turn 10. I'll see you in turn 11 as the wars crack on. The great old Year 0 wars. Okay, turn 11. Let's do key developments, and then I'll go through the battles to make sure we don't miss anything. The war between Xibalba and Atlantis has proceeded and gotten a little bit complicated. For one thing, the Xibalban army that was here moved north. It didn't fly home. Or was this a different army? I don't know, but it looks like the Xibalban force that was, to me, it looks like the Xibalban force that was here went north instead to a province that is cut off and they can't get any income from, and is sitting here. Maybe because they can recruit in forests. Xibalbans can recruit in forests. They could turn this into a recruiting base. But it's just a bit of a weird move. Makoni moved in on Xibalba, so the GC didn't hesitate. Vulturing happened. So armies of Maconian infantry and mercenaries came in and took 145 and 125. 125 valuable for its income. 145, yeah, not so much. I got excited when I saw the purple. I was like, "Oh, is there a death site?" No. No, there's just 28 income, and it's a pretty worthless wasteland. So this Xibalban army now has nowhere to go. I mean, it can go south into Makoni. That's pretty much it. Elsewhere, Atlantis did move on to the capital and killed a lot of PD. And this will serve, I think, as a validation to the basic idea behind this model. Defensive box of multi-attack infantry, scary thug, and PD who can't be scripted. Spaced, so that you only get one line of bats between the thug and the middle units. Now there are casualties here amongst the deep ones, but for the most part they do the job. They have decent attack values, 2 attacks, and if they hit they'll kill. So for 5 warriors the deep, all of the capital's PD is cleared. Over here, Atlantis moved to take the territory, and Xibalba moved their entire army out. So here we have a basalt king with gearing, surrounded by bats. It's routed. And the freaking sling stones come in to add insult to injury. What killed it? Sun Guide. A Sun Guide hit it in the leg with an obsidian blade for 11 points of damage. Target was killed. Oof. Damage roll 21 v 13. Nice. 21 plus 13 versus prot roll 22 plus 3. So the dice slightly exploded on the hit, and you can see the starting point was pretty comparable to the prot anyway. Anyway, so that's a geared basalt king down. So in some ways you might say, oh, that's a victory for Xibalba, but problem, their cap's now under siege and their army's outside. So they have to bring their army back to their capital if they want to free it. And I'm not sure that this army, as it is, 55 units, is up to the task of defeating a super thug and the warriors of the deep. Or at least it's a gamble. Now, if they had recruited stuff last turn, there's a lot in the capital. What they could do is sally at the same time. They won't be caught by these units down here. These are mercs. The Raiders and the Lost Legion. Atlantis has gone all in on the mercs, by the way, which is interesting, but it also is a way of solving that problem I identified last episode, which is they don't have enough siege strength, they don't have enough stuff. This is a lot of stuff you can get quickly, 1, 2, and it will help work on those 250 wall integrity fortifications. So interesting, that's the Atlantean-Xibalban war. We'll see how that evolves next turn. The other big war we have is over here, Yomi Femoria, and this was a much less eventful turn. Yomi moved its forces to sort of spread out along the border, so you can see that it's going to move into these provinces next. It swung a Dione north and captured 68, putting it on the border with TNN. And it moved its southern Dione back up north, which sets itself to go into 24 this turn. Next turn, and for this Dione to swing into 60, and these armies can take 40 and 60. Now, what Femoria needs to do is decide where they're going to go with their kings and their army. They've created a second Fomorian king, who, if they're appropriately geared, are an option for fighting against Dione. Oh, sorry, long day. An option for fighting against Dione, but I'm not sure what their gearing is, and I'm not sure if their bless is online yet. If they're dormant, and I'm hoping they're dormant for their sake, then any turn now, whatever their bless is will come online, and they'll have their heavy thugs, which they can turn into counter thugs and hopefully oppose the Dione. Otherwise, at the moment, Yomi is in strong control of this war. Let's go through the other battles. Sarmatia, making it look easy. We saw Xibalba. Pangaea attacking Ulm. I will check in the next episode what is going on there, because we've had some back and forths between Pangaea and Ulm at this point. Oops, I didn't mean to view that. Beratos, Colossi Warriors doing their thing. We saw the Basalt King die. Saro, Makoni vulturing Xibalba. Beratos killing off more independents, all through the power of Colossi Warriors. Helheim pinging their throne, seeing the wizards. Hinnom trampling over Indies. Helheim trying to get back on track and bumping Hinnom. So Fungwood over here. Is this a bump? And if so, why are there barbarians? I'll check that afterwards. But barbarians are not a good counter to Hellherdings. Neither of these are Vim, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, no, bye. Yeah, no, they cleared it. They must have had barbarian mercs and then gotten merked. Ugh. And they did no damage. So Fungwood, because Helheim needed another province, is now in Helheim's hands. 1, 2, 3. It's not too far from Helheim's cap. That said, it's only 2 from Hinnom, so we'll see if that causes a diplomatic incident. Beratos, Calum, not sure what the plan was here. Do they think all the commanders were dead? Or is this a misclick? Might be a misclick. 1 commander and 1 infantry suicided. Calum killed an independent province. Xibalba, we saw that one. And independence lost to Ulm. Fine. Okay, so anything of note? Well, obviously the loss of the Basalt King, but the trapping of the Xibalban army outside their capital is interesting. The second thing is, see, Calum sort of recovered. That said, it's turn 11 and they're 7 provinces and they've lost a lot of troops. If I was their neighbour, I would be looking at them enviously. In the sense that I want this covetously, because I want their stuff, but I don't envy their position. Sarmatia, meanwhile, has hooked around to sort of encapsulate as much of this territory as possible while holding off Helheim. They haven't really competed with Calum, despite Calum being soft. What Saro can now do is fill in all this independent territory, and then if I was Sarmatia, I'd consider attacking Calum. I mean, it's that, or you say Helheim is the biggest threat and you try and ally with, say, Pangaea and Beratos or some combination thereof to say, let's take the elves out of the game, and then you become a central continental empire. So either you're going to expand to the sea, because that won't lengthen your front too much. You'll just replace Calum as a neighbour with Agartha, TNN, etc. But roughly the same size of border, but more territory. Or you go super snake mode and you just expand inland. Those are the 2 options available for Sarmatia. As for Yomi, I'm going to wait till next turn, because next turn will prove whether or not Formoria is able to sally out of their capital and make an impression, or whether they're going to sit tight and wait for their bless to come online. So I'm going to tick over to the next turn. We're going to go over it. We're going to assess the wars, do a little feature. Then we're going to do graphs and diplomacy, because I think it's time we had a roundup on all of those. So now it's a short one, but I'll see you in turn 12. Okay, it's turn 12, the final month of year 0 of this Ascension War. And there are 2 wars that we need to feature to close out this year. In one, the attacker is having their way of it, and in the other, the defender has struck back. Let's look at the Xibalban front first. I will go through all the battles from this turn, but it's interesting to look at this at the map level. Xibalba kept their eastern army in that forest, I presume to recruit, while Makoni came over to 148 and took this province basically without any involvement from Xibalba, because it was still independent. It was all those horse tribe. They cleared it out. So Makoni is now in their business. However, there was a battle on Xibalba's capital. And remember last term where I said I wasn't sure there was quite enough stuff here? Well, Xibalba tended to agree. So we have the Wall of Xibalban Scorpions. These have 2 14 damage attacks, and of course the tail is death poison, so 35 poison damage armor negating. Big, bad, scary. And then you've got the bats at the back. Who's Rage Against the Water Elemental and who made a Water Elemental? Either way, the bats have dropped in. They've landed behind most of the Shamblers. So the bats do not get instantly massacred and instead get into combat with the Basalt King. Now, the Basalt King can only kill one of them a turn. So what he's hoping here is that his Fear Aura counts. Now, interestingly, the Shamblers and these Scorpions are going at it on a relatively even basis. Scorpions have 2 attacks. Shamblers have 2 attacks. Shamblers have 20 HP. Scorpions have, I think, like less than that. Yeah, 16. The Shamblers are better. Make no mistake, they do more damage, but they're outnumbered. And in that scenario, all of those Shamblers are going to die. And what that means is, I'm pretty sure, in fact, he already has. He's HP routed. So he's trying to get away. It's just the bats won't let him. And then the Scorpions get into base contact, and in base contact, what the Scorpions can do is probably try and get poison through his protection. The bats flee, the Basalt King flees, so he's probably going to... Is he going to get out of there? Looks like he is, so it's not another Basalt King down. Interesting. Okay, so Xibalba freed their capital. They brought their army home. They lost about half of it in the process, but they killed 16 warriors of the deep and a scout, and they pushed the Basalt King off to 127, which is a decent province, by the way. 127 has 3 gems in it. And there are 2 in 132. If Xibalba was allowed to exist, this would be a small compensation for their terrible starting location. I say small compensation, and I mean it, but it's something. They also came out and they fought... actually, they just put a lot of PD into this. So Atlantis brought the mercenaries over, the mercenaries that were designed to bring a little bit of siege strength. And it looks like Xibalba's PD is just going to mess up the Lobo Guard and probably, like, partially HP route these cavalry. Because the Lobo Guard are going to do nothing. They're going to achieve absolutely nothing. Okay, so the cavalry are now out of ammo, and these are not lancers, they're spearmen. Taking some sling stones on the way in. I probably still like the cavalry in this position. Okay, so the cavalry route, and the only person I think on the team Xibalba that is not routed is this Batab, the actual province commander, who sits and chases off the one guy who was ensnared at the time that the battle was over. And this guy looks like he's crippled. He's crippled. Combat speed 2. So the Batab chases him and axes him. So in a narrow win, all of these mercenaries die and Xibalba keeps the province. And of course the PD now refreshes, all 20 of it. We say don't use PD, but that's interesting because that keeps all of the Atlantean siege strength away from Xibalba. So if I was Atlantis, I would be spamming troops, and I'd be consolidating, because none of this spreading out stuff. I need a big force with a couple of Basalt Kings, and I need to sit it on that cap. I can't underestimate this rival. Meanwhile, on the other front, I'm pretty sure Femoria just denied battle. Looks like they did. So 3 fronts, 3 Dione, Bearer of the Coward Sword, Ruler of the Coward Sword, and Forger of the Coward Sword, the Diones, all of whom with, well, some of whom with backing Oni. So some Kuro Onis, mostly Ko Oni, some just Onis. Interesting that Onis themselves are actually one of the rarer Oni types. Interesting. Meanwhile, Femoria has grouped up, they've recruited some more Fyrbolg, and it looks like no god yet, just still 2 Fomorian kings. Unless their god is a Fomorian king, but that seems unlikely. So, Femoria is now penned into their capital. However, there is this force of TNN that's just taken this last independent province on the border. And I know from my diplomatic dealings this turn that there is rumblings that TNN might be willing to intervene in this conflict in order to bail out Femoria. We'll see. Anyway, moving forward, let's go through the battle list to see if we missed anything on the strategic map. Calum expanding again. Good Calum. I'm only going to stop if there's something interesting. Otherwise, they're pretty self-explanatory so far. Except for that Orm Pangea one. Okay, so not as many fights in general. There will be a arena battle too, as well, relatively soon. So I have a question mark over this Orm Pangea situation. Let's talk about that in a minute. The best way to do this, I think, is talk graphs, then talk about what I've heard diplomatically, and then what I haven't. And we can try and fill in the gaps. Statistically, at the end of year 0, Helheim is the clear winner of expansion, with Beratos, Makoni, and is that Yomi? Yeah, Yomi, who's carrying out a successful War 1 so far, as the clear frontrunners in terms of provinces. You have the middle tier guys down there, and at the bottom of the pack, you've got TNN, Kalem, and is that Relay? Yep. All down pretty low. Fimoria has dropped off almost entirely, and that'll be Xibalba down there as well. Not great for the team bat. In terms of infrastructure, some people have no infrastructure online. I think Beratos was ahead, 2 forts built. Ulm is up with their second now. Everyone else is sitting on 1, I believe. And I think some people are still on 0. So TNN 0, Agartha 0, Pangea 0, Kalem 0, Salmatia 0. So some people haven't built any forts yet, including both the underwater nations. Income. Whereas Helheim's got the win in terms of provinces, it's Beratos with their superior scales. Beratos with their Prod 3, Growth 3, Luck, and only temperature scales nerfed is in much better condition than Sloth 2. Order 2, Sloth 2, Growth 3. Like, it's not horrible. It's not completely horrible. I mean, Misfortune 2, Drain 1 is where they bought some Bless, but anyway. Might just be differences in province count then. Not province count, province type. But Beratos leading the way, Helheim in second, and then a significant gap before you get down to Makoni. And who else is there? Saramatia. There you are. You can look at Atlantis dropping off as that Xibalban clay was recaptured. Xibalba's income dropped way off and then came back up as it was recaptured, showing you just how important those provinces that have been changing hands are. In gems, it's Makoni in position 1, followed by Saramatia, then will be Helheim. Yep, that's Helheim. And then Yomi tied in 4th with a couple of other powers. People down the bottom who are struggling. Relay, not really finding any gems. Fimoria lost all their provinces. Xibalba, has to take their gems back. Hinnom has risen in the ranks and is now tied with Yomi. TNN right down the bottom. Gartha up there as well. So not a huge discrepancy in the gem incomes early on. These differences look big, but they are only a couple of gems per turn at the moment. But interesting that Makoni is leading the way. Research, we can already see the tiering. So we've had an overtake. So we saw that the awake statues were dominating early on. So this is Yomi, who's basically researching only with their awake statue, I believe, at this stage of the game. That put them in the lead for a lot of the time, but Relay has started improving their gradient and has now overtaken Yomi, and others will given time as well. So it really just goes Relay, Yomi, and then a cluster of nations, which includes, not Pangea, that'll be TNN, Helheim's in the middle, Fimoria, despite dying, is near the top, Makoni is lower middle, not particularly big on the research so far, Beratos is in the middle. It's actually Hinnom that's in this cluster of higher nations. Did not expect. Dominion, there's no competition. Helheim by a mile. Helheim is big, they're rich, they're building temples, and they're spreading their dominion freaking everywhere. They had an awake statue which is spewing it out of their capital. And they have precious little competition for dominion. So they are spewing dominion candles out all over the place. And finally, army size, if you ignore the Omniscience at the top, which is the clear game leader at the moment, because of course, give me infinite gems, and the Omniscience just starts with a huge army, right? Followed by Makoni and all of its Pell tests, then that will be Ulm, I believe. No, Ulm is tiny. Ulm is tiny. That's Relay. That's Relay. Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, so they've recruited... Relay can create free spawn. Relay can create these things, grandmothers and mothers, which are expensive, immobile priests who create a small number of polypal small spawn per month, who are these little, hard to hit, highly armored 1 HP underwater chaff. So that might be driving the numbers up. Also, Lobo Guards and a whole bunch of Slave Guardians. Relay has an army of crap, absolute crap, but it's cheap and it's easily massable, so that explains why they're up the top. They kind of got that in common with Makoni, in that their army is composed mostly of garbage. Whereas someone like Helheim is sure they're down the bottom of the graph, but almost all of those troops will be Hellheadlings who can massacre the crap of other nations. Yomi, likewise, tiny army at this stage, but that's because they're mostly using Dione, who can come and break your shit. And who's that? Agartha. Agartha also with a large army. Interesting that they are investing very heavily in Pale Ones and also Olms. They must be putting a lot of gold into their army at the expense of infrastructure if they have that many troops early on, which leads to an interesting sort of position. Let's talk about the diplomacy I know, and then try and fill in the gaps. Firstly, we know that Beratos is broadly happy with the expansion they're staging, although they haven't said this, and I would note, these 4 Helheim provinces here are a bit of a salient for Beratos that I would be concerned about, but overall they think it's a solid expand. They have napped Atlantis, I believe. I will check that, but I believe they have a nap with Atlantis. Ulm. Over here, I don't know what's going on with Pangaea, but I am told that Ulm has napped Makoni and Hinnom, which leaves the potential targets for Ulm as Pangaea, Beratos. I'm interested in the fact that Ulm napped Makoni because I would consider both Makoni and Hinnom decent first targets for Ulm before Magic comes online, because Axe Warriors do such a phenomenal job against Gigantes and against Helot troops. But they'll do okay against Britian troops. They won't do as well against White Centaurs, unfortunately, unless they've got allies, and I think Yomi is probably a little bit busy. Anyway, they could go after Agartha, hypothetically, but it's through this one province connection over here. So anyway, Ulm has friendship with Hinnom and Makoni, so they look for their potential targets in Pangaea or Beratos. Atlantis has napped Relay. They've napped Makoni. So Atlantis is agreed not to attack GC, and they also tell me they've prepared a province swap. Was this it? This was it. This was the province swap. They've given Makoni this province down here so that Makoni can attack Beratos from 2 directions. So that tells us that GC is planning a year 1 war by Makoni against Beratos. That's interesting. Beratos is about the same size, richer, possibly stronger. So I will get the details on, I imagine that's going to be a team effort. I will get those details, I will make notes, and I will come back and I will record that next turn so that we know where we're going there. But interesting that Atlantis, this is a good move by Atlantis. If you're busy in a war with Xibalba, you don't want GC coming in and taking the capital while after you've had a reverse. You want GC busy doing something else, and you want that thing to not be bullying you. So trading a province so he then goes fights Beratos, who is someone who you probably want slowed down anyway, because they're a major coastal power with late game potential, so you're always happy for someone to go beat up Beratos. Making this deal and allowing this trade to take place so that GC can go fight Beratos is actually a great idea. The final bit of diplomacy I know about is that apparently, and I'm not sure if this note exactly corresponds to this turn or next turn, I'm a bit ambiguous with my paperwork here. TNN is approaching people, I believe Agartha, to go in against Yomi in order to save Femoria. So we'll see how that one shapes out. That one's really one for year one. So what don't we know so far as diplomacy goes? Well, we don't know anything about what Helheim's up to. And you know what? That makes a sort of sense to me. They're big, they're distended, they don't want to be involved in, they don't even want to come for them. They're rich, they're powerful, they're dangerous. I think they just want everyone else's other wars to start up around them before they intervene, or at least I would. In the best world, they'll join a coalition with someone else and crush a third power, earn some goodwill, and buy some more time without people noticing that they have exploded into being a major, major, major power. And then they can win their second war with an elfing, probably, because they've got mega blessed elves, they will have built up a collection, etc. We don't know what's happening with Pangaea, so we don't know what their intention is. I believe Yomi has a nap with Pangaea, or will shortly. I'm not sure if that's in by turn 12 or whether it takes until about turn 14 for that to happen, which is interesting. So there's not going to be a backstab by Pangaea, I believe, which leaves Pangaea with a number of options. The easiest matchups are probably people like Ulm and Agartha, considering taking geography into account, although Ulm has an Awake Expander to serve as a deterrent. Fighting Helheim would be a chance to knock out a major opponent, but you probably don't want to do it alone, because White Centaurs versus Hellherdings is not the stomp fest you usually want with your White Centaurs versus something else. Then there's Saramatia, and Saramatia we also don't know a huge amount about at this point, but they're doing very well. They're expanding well. Their Oropata are something that most people won't have an answer to. Saramatia's got a couple of options. They could get involved in the Yomi conflict. A more appetizing target might be to eat poor Calum over here, maybe with cooperation from Hinnom or someone else. That would allow them to, like as I've said before, take a lot of territory without extending their front too much. Otherwise, they can strike against major potential rivals in Helheim, steal these Crystal Amazons, move in, take these, kill these undead, and take this gem province right here and carve into the center of Helheim. But Hellherdings and Oropata is too much of an even fight for most people's blood. Or you can strike southwest on a very narrow front near Hinnom, which I probably wouldn't do. Of those options, if you're not going to attack Yomi, Calum is the easy option, and Helheim is the strategically rewarding one if you can get access to people who are willing to assist you. You don't want to fight them one-on-one. No one wants to fight Helheim one-on-one at this point. Beratos is about to get attacked, it sounds like, by Makoni, presumably in coalition. It'll need to be in coalition because otherwise Beratos is in a very good position to just throw that attack back from whence it came. The Colossi are good. They're good, especially with the fact that they're supported by a bless. The Britian economy is quite large. They're in a position to be able to resist, and that's important. If Beratos had its choice of wars, Beratos is actually in a very good position geographically to want to fight a coalition collapse on Helheim. That would probably be with Pangaea and Saramatia and Hinnom, because it would allow Beratos to collapse this salient here, move in, carve in this out the central territory without extending their front too much. So it would be a straight linear extension. And of course, Helheim is dreadfully scary, and Beratos wants them gone, and it would provide a nice distraction. While Beratos techs. Anyway, we'll see what actually happens over the next few turns. I think what's going to happen is this war over here is going to come to a head. TNN may intervene. Xibalba, the Xibalba Atlantis fight will continue because of the noble resistance being put up by the bats. And then we'll see if this Makoni-Beritian war eventuates and becomes something. We also have to very carefully watch what's happening with Ulm and Pangaea because, as I've said, I don't have enough information to tell you exactly what's happening there. I wouldn't want to fight between each other if I was them. Maybe if I was Pangaea, I could be convinced to do it. But I'm convinced that for both, the optimum course of action is to strike elsewhere. Anyway, that's been Year Zero. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're appreciating the new format. And to those players who decided to kick off their first wars in Year Zero to ensure we had something to talk about, my thanks. My thanks to Hairdalas for starting this war over here. Thanks to Mandar for starting this one. And you know what? Thanks to Foxy for bringing the fight and making it entertaining with the Bat Boys by turn 12. Really appreciate it. I'll be back another time with turn 13, 14, and 15. See you then.